Like, this can be a time of harmony. This idea, maybe literally like on the equator, that it's 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night, and up here, pretty much the same. We pretty much experience like, and also today's the first day of fall, but I also just want to acknowledge, I'll look in the camera as if there's people in the southern hemisphere, that today is the first day of spring. And just as a side note, because I visit Brazil, which is right in a town right by the equator, it does mean a lot to me that today is the first day of spring there, and acknowledging that. But it could be a time of harmony and transition. But it's also this day where it's 50-50, only lasts for one day. So it's not like there's only balance for one day. But it does seem interesting that as the days move on and there's darker days, there's still harmony. There's still there's still balance, and it may be that every day is different for each one of us. I was thinking about how many types of spiders there are in Los Angeles. I don't know, just like throw that out at you. But it's one time of year, there's like this certain kind of spider web and a certain kind of spider, even outside my house and inside my house. And it's like, that's their time of year. They're in balance. And another time of year, it's a different kind of spider. And anyone else experience, like, where do they live for the rest of the year? So today's like maybe the day of balance for the sun and the equinox, but there's other times of the year that are balanced for other plants and animals. It's their time, it's their best moment. And yeah, for us, we can actually have best moments every day. In fact, within one day, we could have a best moment and a really crappy moment. And I think that's one of the great aspects of like a philosophy behind equanimity that I've learned from my teachers and my own experience, that all things rise and pass away, that there's change, and that change, even with one hour and one day, is really important to acknowledge. That when we realize that the change is inevitable and really deeply relate to that, there's a lot of discontent that can happen. Like if we expect everything to always be perfect. So it kind of goes with this saying, most notably from the Chinese, that life has 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. And so that can all happen in one day sometimes, it seems like. But to always expectations can be one of the greatest forms of suffering if we expect everything to go well. So if we expect things to also have, sorrow in our lives as well as joy, it definitely puts a buffer and a cushion on reality. And so equanimity can be quite a bit about reality, and to be able to cultivate, along with compassion, can be a wonderful and powerful way to weather different storms. So let's see, I have this one definition. It's sort of coming from my own experience, that finding equanimity is kind of like this. It's finding serenity from different kinds of storms in life, as if I have my own inner umbrella. So some kind of unpleasant thing can happen, but that's a lot like a storm. And if I can have my own inner umbrella, so it's a little bit of a protection in that moment. It's been equanimity has been described to me like my dear friend and teacher Jane Broadwell, who I met from here, told me this story that I'm sure she learned from others. It's kind of like the difference between a young parent's view of their children running around kind of out of control, and a grandparent's view of the children running around. And the grandparent can step back kind of like and shake their head like, oh yeah, where the parents are kind of lost in it. And so equanimity is sometimes described this way, that it's kind of this wisdom that one has when we don't get so caught up in the drama of things. And that's not really easy to do in everyday life. There's so many dramas. But I thought that's a really nice kind of experiential comparison. Another equanimity example I think has been very inspiring for me is a more secular version of the serenity prayer. May I have the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So the may I have could be, may God grant me. I don't want to discount that. But I use the may I have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And a good part of that is to not push things away. I'll get a little bit more into that. Another definition is from one of my favorite teachers, Buddhist teachers, Gil Fronsdal. And he talks about equanimity as being this kind of balance that comes from inner stability. And to actually notice some kind of inner stability, an inner calm, a well-being, a confidence, a vitality, or an integrity can help keep us upright. Like a ballast keeps a ship upright in strong winds. As inner strength develops, equanimity follows. And I remember hearing that, I think, what's a ballast? So in case you don't know, that boats, they put, whether it's a big boat or a sailboat, that if you put weight at the bottom of the boat, when there's big waves, because there's a lot of weight at the bottom of the boat, when there's a lot of waves or storm, it won't tip over. So this idea that equanimity can be like the ballast that holds the boat from tipping. And so I used to think equanimity is like, this perfect balance, this perfect posture, because Gil here is talking about posture, really. He's talking about stability, and it's kind of a good image, too, because we use our posture during meditation. We literally can sit tall and balanced and stable and hope that the mind will follow. It's a great inspiration. But that equanimity can also be, and this is how I feel it in my own life, is that if the wind is blowing or the sailboat is tipping, it's going to go, I can go pretty far, but it doesn't go under. The idea that it can, come back, that there's resilience, literally some form of resilience. And I think that's where it seems to me that different meditative practices can really come in, and having support of a sangha or a community really comes in to support each other when times are tough. Because sometimes we really do need others to support us and to help foster equanimity, but also it is something that comes from within. So this idea can also be like a tree bending in the wind, something that is another example where there's a big storm. Using these images from nature, there's a big storm, and if the tree bends and snaps, it's over for the tree. But if it can bend with the wind and have resilience, and it can survive another day, another beautiful day, another stormy day. So a definition of equanimity, this is literally from Oxford English American Dictionary. It's mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. And then they give an example. She accepted both the good and bad with equanimity. So that's the kind of simple. She accepted the good and the bad with equanimity, with kind of an equal mind. And then in Buddhism specifically, and there's just not enough time to talk about what is taught in Buddhism for equanimity, but it's a state of mental balance and even-mindedness. It's one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, which are considered to be these sublime mind states, these divine abodes where the mind can rest. And equanimity involves maintaining an inner calm and steadiness regardless of the external circumstances. So to develop equanimity, it is a kind of superpower in a way if we can actually reach that. And it depends with the situation. So many things can take us by surprise that it's hard to be, I'm going to be equanimous now, I'm going to have equanimity now, because there's that reactivity that can come. And if it's an autopilot reactivity, from what I understand, that it lacks a foundation in mindfulness. So if we cultivate and practice mindfulness and being more and more aware, more prepared for moments that do have storms, that do have sorrow, and we're more awake and aware in this kind of mindful way, that we may be able to have more and more moments where we are with equanimity, and that it can help us in these very difficult times. So I have a few examples, different ways to have equanimity. And my first example is the story of the three bears. And everybody remember the story of the three bears, that there's the family of bears and that there's the porridge. So the question is, was it too hot or too cold? And maybe there's just the way, for most people, maybe there's a warm porridge that's just right. This idea that, some things are too hot, some things are too cold. And it reminded me of maybe equanimity is, just dealing with the fact that things are too hot, dealing with the facts that they're too cold, but also taking action. If you want it to be medium, you go to the go to the stove. You can actually make it the temperature that's right for you, that we can take action. And this is related to a practice on cultivating equanimity that I learned in my very first silent retreat many years ago. And it's a little bit like the metta or the loving kindness practice. And it also comes from an ancient Pali chant, which is the ancient language that is the early Buddhist writings are in, related to Sanskrit. And it goes something like this. All things rise and pass away. I am the heir of my intentions and actions. And although other people care for me, it's my own intentions and actions that bring me joy and sorrow, not someone else's wishes for me. And so it has a lot to do with this idea that we can take our own action. We're responsible. But also the same chant can be used towards a friend. So it's like you are, let's say, it always starts with all things rise and pass away. So this idea of impermanence, they really want you to recognize, that things change. And because our expectations of things not changing can cause suffering. So all things rise and pass away, and you are the heir of your intentions and actions. And although I care for you deeply, I even want to help you, it's your own intentions and actions that bring you joy and sorrow, not my good wishes for you. So there's a quality in teaching about equanimity that can be cultivated, that we have to take our own action, that it's not something that we just settle on, that there are some kind of activities that are happening in our life we can be equanimous about or have equanimity for, but also to take action is like equally as important as a result. It's also, for me, very beneficial to see contrasts. And this idea of a contrast, an example I'll give you, is like kind of knowing the opposites. And just to define what that is, Thich Nhat Hanh, it's a quote that I really like. I actually shared this in my talk in June, which was the summer solstice, by the way. I kind of got lucky. That he says, you can't have light without the dark, or the political left without the political right. He goes, you can't have lotus without the mud. No mud, no lotus. This is interbeing. So it's this idea of knowing that they're opposites, and sometimes how often that they work together. That the mud and we can't have the lotus or the flower without the dirt. I'm not so sure about the political right and the political left, but he also talks about the light and the dark. And it's a beautiful Zen teaching. So this idea of also knowing on the equinox is a day where there's equal light and equal dark, and you really can't have one without the other, even though they change and they move. So there's some classes that I teach that are mindfulness-based interventions, and they're all based on Buddhist teachings. And so I did want to offer a short practice, because I like the idea of like, oh, gee, what could I maybe offer people that they could do that might be a benefit? And it might be a benefit to one or a few or more people. So I think it's a good way to cultivate some equanimity in the moment. And so I'm going to just ask if you could imagine on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is the lowest, thinking of something like a little bit stressful, maybe traffic, or somebody doesn't open a door for you, when you've got coffee or something, like that's a little agitating, or something where you feel a little bit stressed, maybe a little anxious. And if you care to close your eyes or just gaze a few feet in front of you, and imagine, where do you feel that in your body? Let's say it's a little bit of anxiety or a little stress, like, is there a place you can imagine, just a very small place, and just notice, like, getting curious, is it in the front or in the back, in the chest, the belly, the neck? Where do you feel or hold stress or anxiousness? Is it big or small? And the intention is to actually find some relief from this, possibly find some relief. So bringing your curiosity, and now imagine that you're slowly breathing, like you breathe through your nose, and that you can directly breathe into that body part that's holding that sensation. So you breathe in, and you can breathe out right through that area, whether it's the front or the back or the left or the right, the chest or the belly, wherever you find it. And now on the next breath, see if you can hold that in-breath just for a beat, like a warm hug, like a caring, warm hug, that you're hugging that place in your body. So the breath is hugging that feeling of stress. And then breathing out through that place in the body, breathing through that area, and possibly even releasing a little bit of stress with the out-breath. So doing this again, take a slow, deep breath. Imagine that kind and curious breath going right into that area, and then breathing out. And each breath, just a little hug. And doing this on your own for a few. And you can do this as many times as you like, or stop whenever you want. And if your eyes are closed, inviting you to gently open them. And so it's just a short practice. It may be a time where you need to find some equanimity. Like, is there this possibility to stop some kind of autopilot reactivity and to not push away an uncomfortable feeling, and to actually look at it with curiosity, to the point like you can define its size, its place, its shape, and give yourself a little hug with your breath. And also this idea of breathing in, this is kind of an ancient practice, but scientists know today that doing these kind of breathing exercises can calm the central nervous system. And from this, if you have a mind that's busy and getting a little bit overwhelmed, it's a possible place to come back, to reboot some calm and find some equanimity. It's just a short practice you could do any time of day. And yeah, so just moving as a possible short practice. Any thoughts? Anything come up with that? Questions? Nope. Yes? I hope it's a benefit if you try it in the future. So, and I should check in online there too. Any questions? Everything? All right. And so I was mentioning about contrasts, just to even notice, sometimes unpleasant feelings that arise can be the trigger to do something like an avoidance. Like, the closest thing to me might be my cell phone when something happens, like some little storm in life arises. So instead of equanimity and facing, compassion and mindfulness, it could be like, oh, there's my cell phone. I'm gonna, start going through social media. I actually like to read that. Sometimes I don't know why, but I find reading the news to be like a distraction, until I notice, like, I'm admitting this, like many other people, that it can be like this enchanting place. It's like a little pacifier. But there's so many other types of avoidances too, such as eating ice cream or boxes of cookies, or some people smoke cigarettes, some people drink, some people gamble, some people play video games for hours, and some people do really healthy things too. But some people take walks and exercise, and so I promote all that. But this idea of finding equanimity and being compassionate to our own discomfort, even doing this short practice, even doing any practice that you find you already do for, instead of an hour, maybe just for 5 minutes, to settle and cultivate calm, a balance of mind. You don't have to call it equanimity, but that it's so often that we reach outside of ourselves, for material things to calm ourselves and entertain ourselves, that we do have this incredible capacity through mindful awareness, compassion, equanimity, joy, goodwill, to reflect, even for a minute, just reflecting, taking 3 breaths. Like 3 breaths might just be enough to really find that balance of mind. And it's all within us, so it's something that we can find within ourselves. One other, I think, wonderful practice, people talk about gratitude practice as a way to also really come into balance and to just appreciate this act of appreciation. So I have a 1993 Camry. 1993, that's 30 years. And I have had many periods where I looked at other people's cars, other cars, and just thought, like, oh, I want that car, I want that car, I want that car. And then, honestly, I love my car. My car is awesome. And it has 6 cylinders, and it drives really smooth on the freeway. So just this idea of being appreciative. I appreciate, and I'm really grateful that I have my car. And I have a leak in my roof. I'm not here to tell you about all my problems, but I just, there was that storm. Oh, it was the hurricane. Remember the hurricane, that surprise hurricane that we had here in Southern California, that my roof sprung a leak, and I still have to get it fixed. But just being grateful, it's like, well, I really suffered. Like, oh my gosh, I was so uptight about this, and then literally this antidote is just like, I am just so grateful. I do have my own. I have my house. I'm really blessed, and to, even if it was a rental, I'd be blessed to have a roof over my head, even though it needs fixed. So gratitude is a way to, I find, cultivate equanimity and have if equanimity is defined as a balance of mind, and to not be lost in discontent and suffering. And that kind of takes me to one of my very favorite teachings. If I can find my page with it, but I really don't need that. There it is. It's really about one of my very favorite inspirational teachings. And it is here somewhere. There we go. And it's from a sutta, a Buddhist sutta. It's called the Lokavipatti Sutta. And I enjoy putting it into almost every one of my talks because it means so much to me. And it's kind of goes back to the beginning of the talk about nature and change and how nothing is permanent. But this is a teaching called the 8 Worldly Winds. And the theme is that there's winds. I love this. This is a Buddhist teaching that there's all kinds of winds. And in this case, there's 8 of them. And they have these contrasts, these opposites. And one is gain. We're all going to gain. We could gain in the stock market. We could gain the lottery. We could get a raise. We're all going to have, those are all financial, but we can have all kinds of other gains. So this is a great thing. Yay. But we all are going to have loss. And so just to be recognizing, I remember what I saw, oh yeah, that's really obvious. We're all going to have gain and we're all going to have loss. And so if we don't realize that, we go through life, we could get lost in it. So we could be consumed by gain, or we could be consumed by loss. Like I was a little consumed by my roof leaking. I was consumed by it. But so just knowing that these things happen can be really beneficial. It's like, oh, there's one of those crappy things that just happen, and try to gain a balance. So this idea that there's gain and loss, those are 2. There's fame. We all have a little bit of fame in our lives. We all have a little bit of disgrace or disrepute, if you use that word ever, but disgrace. So we all can have a little praise. People praise us, and people can blame us. Like, have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? that really feels bad. Like every one of us is going to have that in our life. We also might be blamed for things that we did do wrong. That doesn't feel good either. But we also can get praised for things we did well. We might even get praised for something that somebody else did well. But these things happen. There's two more. There's pleasure. We're all going to have pleasure, and we're all going to have pain. And just knowing that can be beneficial. But I think the icing on the cake of this teaching was the Buddha saying, don't get consumed by either. So if you do have fame, think about the people who have fame and they get consumed by their fame. Their egos get blown out of control or start bragging, or their life is all about their fame. And what happens when they have loss? What happens then? They could be consumed by their loss. So this idea of being consumed or lost, that equanimity is a place where we recognize, maybe with joy, oh yeah, I have some gain, I have some pleasure, I have some fame, but to stay grounded and to appreciate, that this has happened, but also have equanimity. That is like a key component, is to have equanimity for all those good fortunes, but also to have equanimity for the loss, for the disgrace, for the blame, and for the pain. And so there are these great teachings that teach us about everyday life challenges, joys and sorrows, and ways to cultivate equanimity.